Hi, and welcome to Understanding Far-Right Radicalization, a presentation by Solidarity Over Supremacy Whidbey. This is an introduction to the Pyramid of Extremism, which is a seminal piece of research done in 2008, and it's tailored to our Whidbey Island audience and others in the Pacific Northwest to build understanding of far-right radicalization. The pyramid is a super useful tool, and we adapt it a little bit here to the context that we're facing, in particular on Whidbey Island, with regard to far-right anti-government militia, since that is the top of the pyramid that we're dealing with here on Whidbey Island. So thanks for sticking with us. There's some great content in here, and please keep listening. This first slide is going to lay out the pyramid of radicalization, which is a really simple and powerful way of understanding how seemingly regular folks can actually get sucked up the ladder into political extremism and violence. One really important thing to understand about the pyramid of radicalization is that the interventions in a community are very, very different for folks at the bottom, sympathizers, versus folks at the top, militia members, and people engaging in political violence. You can see on the right, there's the list of appropriate interventions that go from learning and connecting all the way up to law enforcement, and we'll go into more detail about those as we go along. So the top of the pyramid is militia, and these are groups made up of individuals who are committed to political violence, and they engage in frequent, repetitive threats towards people who don't agree with them. In the U.S., in the current context, they are deeply informed by white supremacist, misogynist, and anti-LGBTQIA ideologies. They engage in armed collective action like January 6th. Some of them use coded language of white supremacy, some of them use very explicit language. One local example of a militia member is Washington 3% militia member and Deer Lagoon Grange member Eric Rohde. For militia members, the appropriate interventions are actually not at the community level, they are at the law enforcement level. So when we see prosecutions for January 6th crimes at the national level, or when we see Washington state or local prosecutions for the invasion of Governor Inslee's mansion by militia members on January 6th, that's the level of intervention that's needed to address folks who are engaging in illegal political violence that threatens the lives and safety of others in the community. The second tier of the triangle is called leaders, and these are people who are not actually militia members but do support and often advocate for extreme, illegal, or violent actions. In the U.S., in the current context, these are people like Tim Hazelow, who is the chair of the local Island County Republican Party, who are very focused on disenfranchising voters. They are very focused on circulating racist conspiracy theories. They do use coded language about white supremacy. They often use very explicit anti-trans language, and they're interested in forwarding the extremist policies of the militia, but through more mainstream means such as local Republican parties. Interventions for leaders at this part of the pyramid are really to do with community collective action and voting. They have to do with voter protection at the state and county level and civic engagement, robust conversation about voting rights, and, for example, establishing local and statewide task forces to ensure that voters and our democratic process are protected from extremists who are seeking to undermine it. The third tier down in the pyramid of extremism are supporters. And these are people such as Lane Campbell, who's a deputy sheriff in the Island County Sheriff's Department, who believe or support racist conspiracy theories. They may justify or remain silent in the face of violent or illegal actions, but they don't generally take part in them. They certainly ignore evidence that extremism erodes basic democratic values, and they tend to circulate very extreme language and conspiracy theories in the public square as part of their active support for extremist movements. You can see the highlighted piece in this slide is an excellent example of that type of extremist rhetoric. The most effective interventions for addressing supporters of extremism are all about community education and community organizing. They're about understanding the nature of extremism. Where are the local institutions and spaces that extremists are using to recruit folks, understanding their inflammatory rhetoric, understanding their language, strengthening our local democracy, and really taking direct community action such as boycotts or creating resolutions in other spaces to ensure that extremists aren't able to take over local democratic institutions and local community institutions. Sympathizers, the largest group of people at the bottom of the pyramid of extremism, are folks who are vulnerable to racist conspiracy theories, perhaps because of their identity or their social location or being under economic or health or other types of distress. These are people who are vulnerable to recruitment by extremist supporters, leaders, and militia. These are the people that the supporters, leaders, and militia are looking to bring up the pyramid of extremism. These folks are often recruited into spaces where extremism has taken root, such as Deer Lagoon Grange or the National Rifle Association. You can see here on this slide, this is the type of kind of fear-mongering recruitment media campaigns that many extremist organizations use to try to activate fear in sympathizers and bring them into and then up the pyramid of extremism. At this level of sympathizers, the most powerful interventions are the more personal ones. So, conversation, especially by family, friends, and community members, talking about shared values such as equality and democracy, and building common ground, like in faith spaces and that kind of community space. Also, really important here is reaching out to folks to help them learn how extremists are trying to actually turn white people, particularly working and middle class white people, against people of color, trying to turn straight people against LGBTQIA people and others, and helping people understand that their circumstances may be challenging, but the solution is not to be turned against other parts of our community in a violent and hateful way. This last slide encapsulates three really important dimensions of the pyramid of radicalization: the consequences, so what actually happens in a community at each level of the pyramid, and then the interventions that we mentioned before. So this slide helps us to understand the appropriate intervention at the level of engagement that a person has on the pyramid of radicalization, and also it helps us understand really the nature of the threat of radicalization if it continues unchecked in a community. Thanks for watching. For more information on SOS Whidbey, please visit our website, email us to join our mailing list, and we welcome any questions folks may have. Just email us. Thanks.